Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the Down Under Bunker here in Sydney, Australia. Today, pulling out the smallest version of Axis and Allies there ever is, and that is ANA 1941, beginner friendly, perfect if you want to introduce your friends into this game. So assuming this video will be quite short then, because as you can see the board is very small. You can cover the whole board in just a shot like that. So there won't be much content to cover each round. So each round might only be a minute long, because there won't be much to talk about. Excited to play this one. Haven't played it for a very, very long time. So keen to get into it. It's going to be, you have to capture 2 enemy capitals. So if the Allies win, that would be Berlin and Tokyo. The Axis would have to capture probably Moscow and London. I can't really see them capturing Washington. So keen to get into it. Japan, in this game, they don't really do much because they can't really capture a capital, but if you let them grow too much, then you're going to lose all your money in the Pacific. So it's a bit of a tricky balance here for the British and Americans, but that's part of the game. So let's get right into it, and I'll see you guys after round 1. See what will happen on the Eastern Front against the Russians and Germans. We've come to the end of round 1 now in this game of Axis and Allies 1941. Pretty decent round, especially in the naval theatre. In the ground there wasn't much action, not many territories were taken, but in the sea, lots and lots of casualties already. So let's start where it all began, with Russia, where they decided to take West Russia, as they should. Lost 3 guys doing it, taking out the 3 German dudes. They did succeed though, and then stacked a lot of stuff in the Caucasus, bringing across 3 guys from Siberia as well, leaving their submarine where it is, and leaving the guys in Karelia as well. The Germans brought the tank across from North Africa, just gave up on that. Didn't see any purpose in doing it. Took out the British battleship and submarine that was in Sea Zone 8 without any casualties. Took out the aircraft carrier and fighter without any casualties. Actually, they did lose the destroyer there. Attempted to take out the American destroyer and transport there, but the destroyer defeated. The American destroyer then tried to come and take out this submarine, but the submarine won that. The British did attack Sea Zone 8, lost a fighter, but killed the submarine and the battleship as well. But the Germans have a lot of stuff here in Eastern Europe, 5 tanks and 11 infantry. In this game, that is a humongous force, so the Russians could be gone in 2 turns. So they better watch out here. The British built a tank in India and also sending the tank from Egypt over, so half decent force in India now. Did retreat all their Pacific Navy into Sea Zone 28, but the Japanese came and took that out. Japanese came and took the Philippines, take that buck away, destroyed the American battleship. Took northwestern China, but lost 3 dudes doing it, which was unfortunate. The Americans have brought their whole air force over to this side, so if the Japanese get close, then there could be consequences. So that is pretty much all that happened this round. Looking forward to next round, and looking forward to see what the Germans will do and how the Russians will try and stop them. Just finished round 2, and this game is potentially gonna decide itself next round if the Germans can do something interesting in Russia. Let's go through the round though. In the Pacific, the Japanese have come and take the East Indies for $2. May not sound like a lot, but in this game that is a lot of money to take in one go. Leaving the take on the Philippines, the British came and took Southeast Asia. Only losing the one dude doing it, backing up India with a couple of dudes, one from Middle East and buying one there. The Russians have come into northwestern China, just putting more pressure on the Japanese, who have now had to put units in Manchuria to defend those $2 there. Still haven't been able to take out the rest of China either, so Japan is under a bit of stress. Not in the naval department though, but in mainland Asia they are. The Americans have bought a destroyer there, buying another infantry there as well, trying to get more naval presence. Over here, the Americans have bought another tank. The British have decided to stack some things in the home territory because the Germans signalling another strategy, a potential sea lion, buying a fighter, sending 3 planes now over to Western Europe, including the bomber. So good range for any naval units that dare to get close. So interesting strategy by the Germans, but the main thing that will happen next round is the Eastern Front. The Russians took Ukraine, the Germans came and took it right back, and now they have their big stack moving forward. The Russians backing out of a few territories as well, buying a tank ready to counterattack. But the Germans will undoubtedly take the Caucasus unless Russia chucks everything in there. And once the Germans take the Caucasus, then Russia will need help from its allies. And there is no naval presence from Britain or America in the Atlantic because of the airplanes that Germany have put there. So it's a bit of trouble in Europe. And the Pacific could go downhill as well for the Allies if they don't start taking control of the seas. So I would say the Axis are ahead, but only by a little bit. Keen to keep playing, and I'll see you guys after round 3. Just finished round 3, and how the game can change in one round. The Allies are for sure on top now, putting pressure on the Germans as they failed an attack into Russia. So this was the result of the battle. The Germans came in with everything from Ukraine, including all those planes, tried to take out a big stack of stuff in the Caucasus, couldn't even get rid of the infantry, with 4 infantry still left as well. Not good rolling from the Germans. From all of their tanks and planes, I think across the 2 rounds, which was 18 dice, I think they only got 4 hits. So that is well below average when you think they're all rolling at 3s. And there were 18 of them, only 4 hits. So, not good for them, but they're buying ground units now. And the Russians don't have much, but if they were to counterattack into Ukraine and have some units left over, then Germans are in a world of pain. The Germans still have their submarine down here, the Russians just moving theirs. The Americans building a transport and destroyer, starting to get things across to Europe, trying to do some landing soon. British still keeping stuff there, although building a fighter, so maybe there's an aircraft carrier on the way. The British bomber coming down and taking out the German transport that was next to the submarine, landing in the Middle East. The 2 infantry from Africa coming over. The British building a infantry in India and doing nothing with the tanks there, just trying to defend it a bit more from the Japanese. Japanese have brought a couple more troops into coastal China, left the units in Manchuria and building even more ground units, so they're feeling pretty comfortable in the naval department, but just trying to get mainland Asia now. Taking Borneo for another $1, so taking the Dutch East Indies here, so that's $3 to them. That's going to help a lot. Still keeping that battleship and destroyer there, but all of this stuff could get together and have a little expedition out to the American coast. So the Americans have got to be careful here because the Japanese definitely do have the dominant navy, but time will tell what will happen in this game and what can happen against the Germans. They're on the back foot now with the Russians potentially attacking them and the Americans and British coming in and maybe doing D-Day landing soon. All of that and more will be shown next round. I'll see you then. Just about finished round 4, heading into round 5 now. And the game has had a bit of pause in the action this round. Few battles to speak of, but the main battle on the Eastern Front has quieted down. The Japanese this round have taken northwestern China, taking out the Russians that were there for the cost of 2 infantry. So now they can start pushing south. The British have backed it up there in southern China with a couple dudes, and if the Chinese were to take that, then there's the counter-attack of that stuff, plus tank and fighter and a couple more infantry on the way. The British have a very strong Indian Southeast Asia. They control that very strongly. I don't think the Japanese will be getting through there anytime soon. Australia is looking under threat this round from the Philippines, but also Hawaii as well. So the British maybe might build something in Australia, but not sure what the Japanese can do with that factory anyway. The Americans have built a battleship, so finally some American purchases in the Pacific. So now the Japanese have to be a bit careful. Over here in Europe, the Russians just sent a few units into Western Russia to back it up. The Germans have retreated out of Ukraine, the Russians just building up in the Caucasus. The British saving their money this round, only buying a tank in India down there, saving the other $5, so something's on the way. The Americans sent their navy next to Canada, so now they are in range of Western Europe. But I think it's going to be more of a help British build a navy kind of thing and then start landing in Germany. So Germany's not looking in a good situation at the moment. They bought 3 infantry this round, just trying to get as many land units as they can. But the game is definitely swinging the Allies' way, definitely in Europe. In the Pacific it's probably a bit more even, but time will tell who will win this game. Round 5 could be a pivotal round in the game. About to start round 6 now as we come to the close of round 5, and there was definitely action this round. Let's start here in China, where the Japanese have taken out the rest of the British and Americans. The British even sending a few more units into there to try stop the Japanese attack, but the Japanese went for it and destroyed everything that was there. So now the Japanese are in a lot better looking situation, with Southeast Asia probably next, and then India after that. Japan is now the second highest producer of money. The British, Germans and Russians are all down at 9, the Japanese are on 14 and the Americans 16. That means the Japanese can build a lot of ground units, so they built a couple infantry and a tank this round, and next round they can build even more. The Americans have finally made a move out to the Hawaiian Islands, deciding that the Japanese have had too much fun and they are coming to spoil it. Also building a fighter there in case Japanese destroy the navy, just have more airplanes to counterattack. Australia fell this round to Japan, not much else to talk about there. Over here in Europe, the Russians did nothing, the Germans did nothing, pretty boring round. The Americans did take Norway, Finland, lost a couple dudes. British built an aircraft carrier, putting their fighter on there. But the Germans, deciding not to build ground units, built 2 submarines this round, and brought this submarine out from the Med. So now 3 submarines, 4 fighters and a bomber. That could probably take that out, so could have been a big mistake there by the Allies. The Russian sub just doing whatever it does, and the Americans building a couple more dudes in eastern United States. So that's all there is from round 5, halfway to double digits. Game is very interesting at the moment, and I'll see you after round 6. It's the end of round 6 now, about to start round 7, and there is action in the Pacific now. A few major battles happened. The game is turning slowly, but could be leaning the Allies' way. Okay, well, here in Europe, the Russians have just built up more, building another tank, another dude. Not much really. The Americans bring across their 2 tanks. And the navy that the Allies spent all their money on is now gone, only for the loss of 1 plane and 3 German U-boats. The Russian sub was also in there, so absolutely no navy left for the Allies. They're going to have to rebuild that. The Americans didn't do anything over here. British didn't do anything over here. In the Pacific though, big battle, both all of the American, all of the Japanese navy battled off the coast of the Philippines, and that is the result. 1 American battleship left, with a few planes as well. So now the Japanese are in trouble, especially with another American battleship on the way. Building up a navy to start transporting stuff again is going to be near impossible. In China, nothing happened, but now it's a good opportunity for the Allies to sweep Japan out of mainland Asia, take away all of those bucks. Japan also took Australia, which the Americans came and took back. What else? That's about it from this round. British buying a tank, that's it. Yeah, that's all there is to say. See you after round 7. We've come to the end of round 7 in this game of Axis and Allies 1941. And a bit of action this round in the Pacific here, as you can see. The British finishing off the Japanese main force there, and the Americans coming in and taking northwest in China, just to put some more pressure on the Japanese. The Japanese themselves, building a fighter and a dude, just trying to get enough air force to maybe take out the Americans so that the Japanese can get their navy back in the waters. That is probably unlikely at this stage of the game, but you never know. The Americans came and took East Indies. The British built a transport, so a bit of action about to happen, maybe on mainland Japan itself. Over here in Europe, the Germans have started building ground units again. The Russians just continue to build up ground units, haven't done anything about it. So it's very much a standoff there. The Americans just building a destroyer, the British saving their money after building a transport. Yeah. So the round overview is getting shorter each round because less and less stuff happens, but glad you're still here, and I'll see you after round 8. Just finished round 8 of this game of Axis and Allies 1941. And in the Pacific we see Japan is really in trouble now, losing coastal China and Manchuria to the British tanks, and the Americans came and took Borneo back, so they're only on $5 now. Philippines is pretty much guaranteed to fall as well, so Japan will be left by itself. The Americans have built a couple of transports, so they're probably thinking about taking Japan soon. Over here on the European side, still no action, but next turn there is pretty much guaranteed to be. The Russians sending all of their infantry into West Russia in preparation for an attack on Eastern Europe, and building another tank, so 6 tanks now. That's pretty good. The British down here didn't buy anything, spent their $10 up north buying a fighter. The Americans didn't do anything in the Atlantic this turn, spending all their money in the Pacific. The Germans now having to defend their capital territory, luckily only from one side. The Allies have decided to go for Japan's capital instead of Germany, so it's good for Germany but not for Japan. Interesting to see what happens next round in Europe. Eastern Europe will be the battleground this round. Find out what happens in that battle right after this. End of round 9 now in this game of Axis and Allies 1941. I have taken a bit of a break from filming, so getting back into it now. And first round getting back into it, and there is lots of action to talk about finally. The game's had a bit of a dull period, and now things are happening. So, over here in Europe we've had the Russians attack into Eastern Europe, and the dice were definitely against them. Could not get many hits at all. So then the Germans were left with a whole bunch of tanks, and they attacked into Western Russia, which had all of the retreating Russian units. So killed off all of those Russian tanks and even a couple American tanks. So now the Russians luckily built 3 infantry on their turn, so a bit fortified, and now the British are coming up to help them as well with all of that they've got, because they want to protect India as well. British over here flying their fighters onto the carrier, backed up by the American one, so hoping they can kill that tank stack and then put some pressure on the Western Front. In the Pacific we had the Americans, after surviving an attack by the submarine and 2 fighters and a bomber by the Japanese, only losing a destroyer for that, took the Philippines. Japanese did buy another submarine, so interesting move there. But the Americans took the Philippines, losing a bomber in the process, wanted to take the island. Interesting move there. Bringing across units to transport to Japan maybe, and buying some more units as well. So that's all from round 9. Moving on to round 10, double digits. The game is definitely in the balance, because Japan will fall, definitely, but depends how long that's going to take. And then it does, big probably deciding factor will be if Russia falls or will the Germans fail. I would imagine the Russians will be able to defend Moscow with another 3 infantry to be bought, I'm assuming. They probably could defend it, and if not, there are 3 tanks and a bomber on the way. The Americans haven't done anything in the Atlantic for a while, so just trying to clean up Japan. Alright, see you after round 10. Alright, we have come to the end of round 10, into double digits of this game, and action is still happening in this game, which is A bit interesting for this late in the game, but compared to the start of the game, there is virtually no pieces on the board now. Over here in Europe, you'll be wondering where the 5 German tanks are. Well, they are in piles in Moscow. The Germans came and took Russia, only lost a couple tanks. British came in only losing 1 tank, taking out 3 German tanks, so good rolling there by the British. The Germans did buy a couple of tanks, so mainly focusing on land, and sent all of their air force against the British and American naval units that were there. Only 1 German bomber survived, and now the British have built 2 fighters already, so aircraft carrier next turn, and this transport's coming up from India, so not looking good for the Germans, especially if they can't take Moscow again. Over here in the Pacific, the Americans did a suicidal attack into Japan, only killing 3 infantry, but just starting to chip away at those guys, building another tank and bomber, bringing more units across. Yeah, that's it from this round. Not much happens in these rounds anymore with this little pieces, but this is why it's perfect to introduce your friends, perfect game to introduce your friends to A&A with. So thanks for still watching, and I'll see you at the end of round 11. Just finished round 11 now in this game of Axis Allies 1941, and next round will be an interesting round, and the round after that will be another interesting round in terms of who wins the game. So the reason being, the Germans have sent all of their units into Western Russia against all of the units in Russia, and they've bought 4 tanks, which is a lot in this game. Might not sound like much to people who play Global 40 and games like that, but in this game that is huge. They did have $25 to spend, so they spent 24 of them on 4 tanks. No planes though, so the British were able to build an aircraft carrier and transport comfortably, so landings in Europe will start soon. Also, the British bring up this transport. Germans do have a bit of a problem now. If they can't take Russia probably on after the 4 tanks come in, then game over for them, I'm sure. British will start landing, and the Americans over here are slowly but surely chipping away at Japan. Brought in an infantry and tank and the 2 fighters, only managed to kill 1 infantry, but on the way is a lot more stuff. Bought a bomber, so in 2 turns there's going to be another big attack, and hopefully for the Americans that does it for them. So that's the end of round 11, heading to round 12 now. See what the Germans can do in Russia, see what the British can do against Germany to try slow them down. Alright, just finished round 12 in this game of Axis Allies 1941, and was an attack in Russia this turn by the Germans. Decided to retreat though after losing infantry, couldn't get many hits, and the British and solitary Russian infantry got hits back. So Germans have retreated out, brought 3 tanks up more, so looking good. The Russians could be, well, they will be probably building 2 infantry this turn, so I would imagine they would be able to hold off the Germans. Germans having to leave stuff behind in Germany now, since the British have 2 transports and a fighter there, a couple more air units there. And the British can sail right into Season 5. It's not like Global 1940 where you have to control Denmark. They can just go right into there. British still bringing up this transport. Over here, the Japanese have just built another infantry while the Americans stock up a lot of stuff. This could be the turn that Japan falls, and the Americans are certainly hoping so, because they need to help out in Europe. That is really all that's happening in this game right now. There's not much else to talk about. The lack of units is definitely noticeable, but I'll see you after round 13. Alright, end of round 13 now, and the Axis have surrendered.
with the fall of Japan. The Americans winning that battle, very tight though. Came down to tank versus tank, and the American tank won. The Americans having to kill their 2 fighters and bombers to make sure they took Japan. And in here in Europe, Britain has really put the gas on and squeezing in on both sides in Germany. And now even building more units, building more fighters. Germany's in trouble next turn. Germans still are earning $16, but Britain is earning 21 and the Americans have earned 28 this round. I don't think the Germans are going to hold out. So I'm going to finish the game here, even though it's not official finish. I know I do this a lot, but it does save me time. So the Allies have won, and there's no doubt that they would have taken Germany. So yeah, no problem there. If there was a slight chance that Germany would have won, I would continue on, but I don't think there's even a slight chance. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this one. Sorry that it took so long to come out, but yeah, a bit different this game. See what I play next time. Still haven't decided. So join me then. Anyway, goodbye. Down Under Bunker, signing off.